Well, welcome. We're back to my office. This is live. You're live. I'm live. This is in real time, and it's going to go for a half hour. I don't now. You don't have to stay for a half an hour. In fact, I don't even know if there's anybody out there. I hope there is. I hope you're there. The opportunity is for us to have a chance to talk. Really, for me to answer your questions. I want to talk a little bit first. Well, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Did you? I did. My wife and I had Thanksgiving with some friends. It was not a big family Thanksgiving. My family's kind of scattered all over the country. My sons and their wives and their in-laws, and I mean, they were all over. So it was a very tiny little Thanksgiving, but it was lovely. It was just terrific, very restful, and it was a great way to end my book tour because I am tired, and having a long Thanksgiving was so pleasant. But now I am back, and I just met with some of my graduate student instructors for next semester, and we're getting ready for a big course, big undergraduate course. I teach a number of courses here. My favorite course, I shouldn't really say that, but let me say one of my favorite courses is a big undergraduate course called Wealth and Poverty that I've been teaching for a number of years here at Berkeley. I love the undergraduates here. I've taught at other places as well, but the undergraduates here are particularly bright and particularly enthusiastic and appreciative, and also very diverse. About 30%, 35% of our undergraduates here at Berkeley are Pell Grant eligible, which means that they come from relatively poor families. And that changes the dynamic of any discussion about wealth and poverty. It ceases to become an academic discussion, and it becomes a much more personal discussion. And it's great to have that opportunity. I consider it an extraordinary opportunity for me. It's a privilege for me to teach them. And that starts next semester. So what I wanted you to, I was originally going to talk with you today about public lying, about the tendency, particularly in this election, and particularly, not to be overly partisan about it, but particularly among Republican candidates, to say things that are not true. And this is especially true of Donald Trump, who seems to decide that the truth doesn't matter. I mean, that the truth really is almost an impediment to making the points he wants to make. I have never in my lifetime encountered a leading candidate for President of the United States who tells such outright and bold-faced lies. And he seems to do it with impunity. I mean, the press has not really called him out. I mean, occasionally they say that he did not have credible backing for that particular statement, or his this particular statement may not have been exactly correct, or it was incorrect, but they are lies. I would like the media to use the term lies, L-I-E-S, in describing what Donald Trump is getting away with, and he thinks he can get away with it. He can say there are thousands of Arabs that he heard, Arab Americans in Jersey, cheering when the Twin Towers went down. He said just a couple of days ago that he had a meeting with black ministers in which they expressed it was a love-in. They expressed love for him, and he loved them. Well, the fact of the matter is that those black ministers, really, most of them who have expressed anything to the media about what happened in that meeting, said that they criticized Donald Trump for some of the things he has said about African Americans over the course of the campaign, and that he has basically lied when he says that most murders of whites occurred by African Americans, or that, and he's insightful with his lies. I mean, when he says that that particular Black Lives Matter protester who came to his rally not long ago in Birmingham, Alabama, was roughed up and punched and kicked by his supporters, when Donald Trump said that he may have deserved it, well, that is insightful. It's bad enough to lie if you're a presidential candidate. It's doubly bad to lie in a way that incites violence, that contributes to legitimizing violence. And we've had enough violence. What we heard about today in San Bernardino, California, look, I don't know exactly what happened, and I can't predict what the authorities will discover about the motives of those gunmen. But I can tell you that mass violence, mass killings, have reached an unparalleled level in America. Those of us who are old enough to remember the 1950s and 60s and 70s really are looking upon what's happening now with kind of a. It almost feels like we're in a different time warp. The mass killings that are occurring are different from anything we've seen before. America's always been a gun culture, and we've always had violence disproportionate to the kind of violence that other countries, particularly countries that don't make it so easy to get guns, have experienced. But to have the kind of mass shootings that we are experiencing over what seem to be issues concerning hatefulness or hate toward a particular group is something that is relatively new, particularly on the scale we're seeing it. The Planned Parenthood killings, the killings or attempted killings of the Black Lives Matter protesters recently, the other examples we have where people are incensed and they take out that they vent that frustration and anger through violence is something that has no place anywhere. I was going to say that it has no place in America. It has no place in a civilized society. It's one thing to allow people to carry guns. It's another thing for political candidates to, and I'm not suggesting they incite this violence directly. I'm saying that if political candidates are being inflammatory in their rhetoric and are choosing scapegoats, such as Planned Parenthood, Carly Fiorina was talking about videos that she alleges showed Planned Parenthood officials harvesting or making plans to so-called harvest the body parts of fetuses and sell them. Now, there is no such video. And Carly Fiorina was told over and over again that there was no substantiation for that allegation. She continues to allege it. So does Ben Carson. So has Donald Trump. And so when you get the kind of violence we've had, that violence is not, and I don't want to blame these candidates directly. I want to say that they're contributing to a climate of hate, a climate of anger. And that combined with easy access to guns, not just handguns, but all kinds of guns, but essentially machine guns. You are creating in the United States a kind of tinderbox with regard to anger and violence and gun violence and hate crimes that is really new in this country and cannot be tolerated. And I think for politicians especially to even indirectly contribute to that is, well, I think frankly despicable. Now you may disagree with me, but I hope I get your questions about this. I want to stop here for a moment. I want to change tone entirely because I find myself getting so angry about some of this and some of the lies and some of the inflammatory rhetoric being used in this campaign that I could go on and use all our time up, and I'm not going to do that. But what I'd like to do is pause here for a minute. Some of you might be curious, maybe you're not at all, but I want to show you around my office. Here I am at Berkeley, and do you mind just joining me? We'll do a little tour. We'll just just for a minute. I mean, you might be curious, maybe you're not. This is my book, by the way. I just thought I'd mention it to you in case you were curious and interested. But I have a lot of other books here, so come with me. Now we are. First of all, let me point out. I have on this shelf a lot of sort of memorabilia that means nothing to anybody. In fact, my students call this my museum. They really do. I think it's sort of slightly pejorative. But I have a lot of things here. This is I used to appear on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. This is my little hat. They give you a hat when you were on The Daily Show. Did you know that? This is I have a number of these hats. And someday, when I really get close to retiring and I need some cash, I'm going to put these on eBay, but not yet. This is Eleanor Roosevelt, and this is Harry Truman. These are little awards for various things. This, you may recognize him. This is, do you recognize him? This is Newt Gingrich. That's not an award. That's a booby prize I got. Over here, this is the original Clinton cabinet. It's a kind of historic piece. There is Bill Clinton and Al Gore looking much, much younger. I'm looking much younger, too, because I'm sitting over there. And then, kind of extending around, this is my bookshelf. These are mostly books about economics, and then books about politics over here. There's a book about, this is a shelf about economic history. This is mostly non-economic history. It is just history. This is, are you with me still? This is philosophy, and some old, I mean, really, we're talking about 18th century, 19th century philosophy. My globe, and then, what else do you want to see? Oh, let's go over here. This is a picture of me telling Hillary Clinton a joke. I don't think she thought that was very funny. Here's Bill pretending that I'm not giving more attention to his wife than he is to me. Here's a picture of a meeting that I had a while back with President Obama, but you can only see the back of his head. You have to take my word for it that this is President Obama. Why does the White House photographer take the back of the president's head? I mean, what's the point of that? These are other kind of, again, mostly memorabilia. And here's where I do my work. This is a setup that I find to be very, very handy because I can work on 3 screens at the same time. People find that it's like being at a control panel. I come in the morning and I roll up my sleeves and I can do work on an article I'm writing on one panel. I can do Facebook if I want to do some Facebook entries on another. I can begin work on a book that I'm just still in the early stages, and I can do emails. I can do it all right from my control panel here. And here's some more books. This is mostly 2 shelves about economic inequality and political inequality. This is one of my favorite quotes. Can you come over here for a second? This is Justice Louis Brandeis, and he says, "We can have democracy in this country, or we can have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we cannot have both." He knew what he was talking about. He said that in the early decades of the 20th century, but it is just as relevant today. We can have democracy in this country, or we can have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we cannot have both. Exactly. And so that's it. That's my my office. Oh, I wanted to show you one more thing. This is one of my favorite cartoonists in the New Yorker is named Roz Shast. I don't know whether you know her, whether you follow her work, but a number of years ago, she did this cartoon. This is the awards you get for timely filing of your income taxes. You know, it's a joke. For $30,000 to $45,000, you get a keychain, an IRS keychain. $46,000 to $44,000, $94,000, you get an IRS mug, and then $100,000 to $199,000, you get a tote bag from the IRS, and then $200,000 and up, you get dinner and dancing with Robert Reich. Well, that was funny then. I'm not sure it's funny anymore. Anyway, back to your questions. We have about 15 minutes for your questions, and I would love to hear them. The other thing I would like to hear from you is whether you would like me to do this live broadcast again. I mean, we could conceivably do it every few weeks, possibly every week. It really is up to you, and so I'd like very much to hear your wishes, your suggestions in that regard. So let's have the first question, please. And this is from Lori McCullough. And Lori asks, "You're so optimistic. do you have hope for gun safety for us all? Laurie, I am not so optimistic that I believe that the United States is going to regulate guns to the extent that Canada does, or Europe does, or most other advanced nations do. I think that gun owners have this fixed idea that somehow the Second Amendment to the Constitution was devised to protect the right to own a gun. And I could give you a constitutional argument about why that can't possibly be the case. It was actually, the Second Amendment was designed to preserve the right to have standing militias in the states. Nevertheless, gun owners and the NRA, I think, are so powerful, we're not going to get the kind of gun regulation we need. But I do think it is possible to get some more regulation in the sense of background checks. I mean, it's insane. You know, why should it be easier to get a gun license than to get a license to drive a car? I mean, isn't it insane that somebody who is prohibited from flying because of that person is a terrorist suspect or has some other background check problem, that person can still get a gun. I mean, if we want to have the availability of guns for hunters for legitimate reasons, that's fine. But background checks and outlawing AK-47s and machine guns and all kinds of guns that have nothing whatever to do with hunting seems to me is a reasonable step. And Laurie, you said, is there any hope? I think there is. I think that people have basically had enough. And I thought after Newtown that would have been it. But the public is becoming increasingly angry with the irresponsible use and acquisition of guns. Next question. And I am an optimist, Laurie. I am an optimist because I've been around long enough to be optimistic. Dora Victor asks, do you believe the media helps to propagate the lies? Dora, I think the media, by repeating the lies, is helping to propagate them. By not calling them out to be lies, is helping to legitimize them. I think that you have certain media like Fox News that are responsible for repeating the lies and not even noting that they are incorrect, and also using inflammatory language that is very divisive and gets people very angry with each other. And the combination, as I said before, the lies and the inflammatory language is a kind of toxic mixture. So the media help to propagate the lies. Yes, in a sense, the media do. And as dictators, totalitarians have known throughout history, a big lie, repeated often enough, begins to take on its own life. People say, well, I've heard that so many times before, it must be true, even though it's a lie. So it is the responsibility of the media to say something is a lie. Next question. This is from Rami Moshe and asks, what would it take for Bernie to win? And what can we do? Well, Rami, I think that Bernie Sanders, and I assume you mean Bernie Sanders, I don't know any other Bernies who are running, I think Bernie still has a very good chance in the sense that as I go around the country, the enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders is much greater than the enthusiasm for any other candidate, Republican or Democratic. And in the primaries and the caucuses that are going to begin with the Iowa caucus at the end of, I guess it's it started February, and then right through Super Tuesday, March 1st, we're going to have enthusiasm, really getting people to the polls. Organization is also important, but enthusiasm and motivation is what gets people to vote in primaries and also to gather in caucuses. And so I think somebody who has that much enthusiasm behind him or her, and behind him in the case of Bernie Sanders, does have a pretty good chance. And I was interested to learn that, for example, Elizabeth Warren decided not to endorse Hillary. She was the lone woman among Senate women who decided not to, and that got some headlines. So your next question, Rami, is what can we do? Well, what you can do is stop sitting there. I don't mean you should stop sitting where you are right now, because it's nice to have you in this conversation. But you can stop sitting in your particular office or home, and you can actually go to these primary states, go to where the caucuses are, help organize, help mobilize, help get out the vote. Citizenship, as I have said sometimes before, is not simply a matter of voting and of paying taxes and of serving on juries. Citizenship really demands from all of us much more engagement, much more activity. And given that the public is now geographically divided between red states and blue states, and red districts and blue districts, it's very important for us to get out of our comfort zones, literally, and move to where the key primary contests are going to be held. And then, after the primaries are over, don't give up. There's still going to be need for you. Regardless of who becomes the Democratic or Republican candidates, you still have to be involved. And you need to go to the key swing states and make sure that you are helping elect somebody who is much better than some of the crazies who are out there as nominees right now, or who would like to be nominees, who are trying to become nominees. All right, we can get back to that. I have a lot more to say, but I see that there are other questions coming in. This is Brian Canham, and he wants to know, if you worked 2 jobs in the retail and service industry, how would you get out when you can't affect a college education? Oh, I see what you're saying. If you work 2 jobs in the retail and service industry, how would you get out when you can't afford a college education? Well, let me just say this, Brian. A college education today, in my way of thinking, is overly... there's too much emphasis on the necessity that everybody has to get a college education. In my experience, if somebody is very good at doing something, they have every chance of getting a good job and having a good career, even without a college education. Now, the big advantage of going to a good college, a college that has some prestige attached to it, is not only do you get a diploma that gives you a brand name, a kind of a diploma that carries some weight, but you also have connections. And the big disadvantage of not having a college education is you can't say, well, I'm a college graduate, and you don't have all those connections into the world of work. But I have come across so many people who have done so well without a college degree, without a college education. It is true, it's hard to get that first job. It's hard to get your first step on a career ladder, but there aren't any careers any longer. People, have in their heads the notion that we're still back 20 or 30 or 40 years ago when there were career paths. These days there are not career paths. If you have command over a particular domain of knowledge or a particular skill, if you are very good at doing something, and word gets out, and word will get out, then you will get jobs, and you can build on that personal experience. You can continue to learn. Everybody has to continue to learn on the job anyway. And so I would not be too disappointed and feel personally disabled if you can't get a college degree. Let's have the next question. This is from Joshua Nussbaum, who asks, what is your next book going to be about? Well, I never talk about my books before I write them. But here's what I'm thinking about. You tell me if you would think this is interesting. I'm thinking about more of a memoir about my growing up and my early experiences, particularly as they reflected my political ideas and values and sort of what happened in the 50s and 60s and 70s, not only to influence me, but to influence the nation. A kind of a memoir that is also a story of a particular time, a particular place, an explanation of what happened to this country. Why did we go from a relatively liberal country in which more and more people were riding an upward escalator between the Second World War and 1980, in which we were at least striving to widen the circle of prosperity, to a country that since 1981 has moved in the exact opposite direction, where we took a big U-turn. Why did that happen, and what experiences did I have along the way that might explain that? And I'm thinking about entitling the book Coming Up Short. What do you think? Just an idea. All right, Wanda Short Henton says, would like to hear you talk about gerrymandering and how it predetermines elections. Well, Wanda, there has been gerrymandering in America for generations, but what we've seen since particularly the last census, and particularly since Republican legislation, and Democrats have done this as well. I don't want to pick only on Republicans here, but Republicans have done it almost scientifically since they've taken over state houses. They have managed to draw districts, and this is state districts and voting districts, congressional districts as well, in ways that keep all of the Democrats, or in many cases all of African Americans, together in one district or a few districts, and then give Republicans or whites a majority status by designing other districts so that they have a majority. So it's possible through that careful gerrymandering, you create districts that look like jigsaw puzzles, weird shaped. You can possibly take a Democratic majority state or a Democratic majority city, or you could take a black majority district or city, and you could turn it into a Republican or a white majority just simply by the design of the districts. What has to happen, and here California has done, I think, very important work, other states are trying the same thing, is to take the districting and the design of districting out from under the hands of the politicians, put it in the hands of commissions that are public commissions, that are citizen commissions, that do districts that are contiguous. And by that I mean that they look like you would expect a congressional or any kind of other district to look. They have symmetry, and they don't look like they are what they are very often, and that is gerrymandered to put some people in and get other people out. You've got to districting is very important. You've got to take it out from under the hands of the politicians. Common Cause, by the way, the organization, the wonderful organization of which I chair, has chapters in many states. California Common Cause was very instrumental in getting that change here in California. Okay, Stevie Hackney, you ask, do you think there will be any real visible change from the climate talks in Paris? I do. I already see change coming, and the change is not so much the talks themselves. I mean, when you have a international conference like we're seeing in Paris already, most of the groundwork has been done. You have every nation's representatives. They've been getting together behind the scenes. They've been working with their politicians and trying to see how far their nation can go in making a commitment to reduction of carbon and other emissions that are causing global climate change. And what's happening in Paris right now is really putting the finishing touches on it. In the United States, President Obama is already and has already made a commitment, quite a dramatic commitment. I think it is possible to fulfill, certainly technologically, but he's not going to rely on Congress to in any way confirm a treaty or pass a treaty, because the Republican Congress don't want to do it. In fact, Republicans have already tried to undermine the president with regard to any kind of climate change initiative. The president's going to do this through his own authority. He already has the authority. For instance, what he's done with the Environmental Protection Agency already. But other countries who don't have to deal with Republicans or Republican majorities or our parliamentary systems, and they don't have to deal with the separation of powers, they probably will ratify those climate treaties that come out of Paris. It looks like we are out of time. There are a lot of other questions that you have. I want to thank you all for joining me. I want to thank Yael Ridge and also Zoe Beck, my two assistants here, who have done such a great job. And maybe we'll see you next week, or maybe we'll see you soon. Thanks.